getting rich off of Valiant comics. 90s Valiant Comics, an offshoot publication that spawned out of Jim Shooter leaving Marvel in the late 80s. Remembered for a lot of extremely popular characters and runs, and some pretty high print counts. In fact, some titles were even beating the big two, Marvel and DC, for the time, which is pretty impressive however you look at it. And despite the fond memories, it hasn't really translated into a financial investment. In fact, Valiant is often the butt of the joke where if you get a collection in and it's all Valiant, a dealer won't even give you anything for it. But is that accurate? There are actually some Valiant books from the late 80s into the 90s that are actually the most expensive books from that particular age of comics in general. Archer and Armstrong, number 0. Cover A, not a big deal. It's like a $5 book. Most people don't even pay that. But the gold edition is up to like a $40 mint raw. Now, you're about to see what happens to Valiant comics when they get 9.8s. The gradeds of this have an easy-selling FMV of 300 fairly solidly. Let's get into the most expensive one on the list, Nintendo Comics System Sneak Preview. This really rare issue just beats all that other Nintendo stuff, which you're about to see. It is about $1,000 raw if you can find a perfect copy, mint condition. Well, if it gets a 9.8, these things can sell for $3,500. Maybe even $4,000 is reasonable. Video game collectors, early Valiant collectors go nuts for this stuff. It's two worlds combining. You also have Game Boy, number 1. Pretty self-explanatory there, about a $75 mint raw. And another one of these $350 9.8s. Super Mario Brothers Special Edition, number 1. We've got a $100 raw in minty. It's actually the first Valiant comic. And then you got a 9.8 sitting pretty at $500. Super Mario Bros. Number 1 is like a $300 minty, but this is a particularly hard 9.8 that actually lands it at about $2,300, if not more. Nintendo Comics System, first Captain N. Here's where we get interesting. There are 2 copies of this. It was like a 96-page thing that recapped some early Nintendo stuff. There's one that shows a price and one that doesn't. Now, this thing is so scarce, I couldn't really find in my research which one is more. They actually seem to be about the same. I can tell you that the raw highs are about $300, but the graded, the sky's the limit. There actually are no 9.8s for either variant of this, and the only sales seem to be on eBay, but not quite sold. And they're like asking like $1,800 for like 9.6s and 9.4s. So I don't know. I know that that would be a really cool 9.8 for me to hunt. Captain N, the Game Master. So if Nintendo Comics System number 1 is the first Captain N, this Game Master number 1 is actually the first Samus from Metroid. Huge Metroid fan. Obviously, that's a big deal. $100 minty. But if you get the 9.8, you got another $500 brick here. Pay attention, folks. This stuff is expensive. Zelda number 1, couple of these. You got your first print, you got the no price printing, and the second printing. So, respectively, you got about like $300, $400, and then about like $200. With the 9.8s, doing $900 for Zelda 1, about $2,000 for the no price variant, and about $400 for the second print. Big money if you can get that perfect grade out of it. And then even number 2, non-key, obviously, the second Legend of Zelda, another $100 minty, and another $600 9.8. Nintendo Comics System number 1, you got about a $100 minty. And I have asterisks here. It says $500 should be the FMV, but there's so few sales of this because the 9.8 is so scarce that could be overinflated, or frankly, that could be too light. You can get rich off of Valiant, man. Nintendo Comics System number 7. This is a weird one. This is actually a Zelda issue that was just a continuation when it flipped on back. $100, and allegedly I have asterisks here. It could be a $1,000 9.8. Not enough data to go off of there. That could be a little too much, maybe. Let's get a little more affordable, but ones you should know. Magnus Robot Fighter #1. $10 mint book, but it actually is a $90 9.8. Magnus #12 is the first Turok with Valiant. Remember, purchased Solar Man of the Atom, Turok, Magnus Robot Fighter, as well as a couple others, I believe. For the most part, people remember them for their original characters, but they did take some from the 60s. Anyway, this $20 minty turns into an $80 9.8. Number 0, which is the mail-in special. If you had 1 through 8 and you mailed them in, you got a special version of this, is actually a $40 raw near mint to mint. Pretty crazy. What's even crazier is a near $200 9.8. Solar Mana the Atom #1 for Solar, $15 book, $100 9.8. Magnus Robot Fighter #5, first Rai. Commit that character to memory. That's one of the most recognizable Valiant characters. $20 near minty, $100 9.8. Rai #0, first Bloodshot. They say it's a $15 book. I find that whenever I've got a perfect copy of this, it sells for $10. I think the market's been oversaturated with our Bloodshot here. And even the 9.8's down to $50. Barely worth getting it sent in. That might be one you hold on to. Then you got your first cameo Bloodshot in Eternal Warrior #4. A little more valuable, $20 near minty, but the 9.8 is also around the $50 pocket. Now back to Rai. Rai #1 through 6 will shock you at some of the values. Rai #1 through 6 are considered scarce, less picked up, whatever you want to call it. And believe it or not, even the raws can fetch up to like $50 for some of these things, with 9.8s of some of them being like $200. Pretty crazy. Solar Man of the Atom #3, Toyo Harada, the Lex Luthor of the Valiant universe. $20 book, $85 9.8. Pay attention here. There's a one in existence gold ink prototype. It's when they first were trying out the gold ink thing. I mean, there's only one known in existence, so there's no slab data, I don't believe. And this one copy is estimated at least $3,000. Okay, so whenever you have a one of one, that's going to be crazy expensive. Solar Man of the Atom 10. Pay attention here. First Eternal Warrior can be up to a $50 near mint to mint. Watch this jump. That $20 to $50 that you're spending on this, if you get a 9.8, that book is about $600. These Valiant 9.8s are crazy. Frankly, they were hard to get. Eternal Warrior 1, the gold edition with the price accidentally on the cover, because there's a gold edition with it off of the cover, which is how it was intended. This thing's a $100 minty with a $300 9.8 price. Harbinger #1, this one's pretty well known. It's going to be about $80 to $100 if you got a mint copy, with a stinking $550 9.8. Again, if you stumble across minty copies of a Valiant collection, a lot of it isn't worth anything, but if you have this stuff, you might want to do a submission, is what I'm kind of reading out of this. Harbinger #2, first Rock, Swallow, and Sparrow, $10, and then $85 9.8. Harbinger 0, the pink promo, where fans had to send in to get this version of it, $75 mint with a $200 9.8. You got your Exo Manowar #1, first Exo Manowar, $20 raw, $120 9.8. Exo Manowar #4, first Shadow Man, $30 raw, and once again like a $120 9.8. Shadow Man #1, first full appearance of Shadow Man, $20 raw, but this one a lot of people picked up, so it's actually more on the census, so it's a $70 9.8. Then you got Unity 1, there's a platinum and a gold. The regular cover is not worth anything, so the platinum and the gold have a little pinch of value there. $10 and $20, with the platinum being a $50 9.8, the gold being a $60. Ninjak #1, only the gold edition has the value here, $40 in mint. And then you got another over $100 9.8. It's getting wild, guys. Bloodshot 0, the gold, another $50 with a $100 price tag. At Bloodshot Zero, the One Existence copy, which was an error, sort of like a pinkish gold One Existent copy. It is one of one. It is a 9.6. It sold for like 3,000 something almost a decade ago, so it would probably be 4,000 now. Yikes. And then you got Chaos Effect #1. There was a variant in a time where there weren't a lot of variants. You got this alpha cover with the red backing, $100 minty with a 9.8 value of $500. If you have this list or the majority of this list, you actually have a bigger payday than a lot of DC and Marvel collections from that same time period. Especially if you have this stuff graded, you're sitting on thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. If you can get 9.8s out of this, Valiant is the stuff where oftentimes you will see 4 times your investment. In the world where a lot of Marvel and DC books have been heavily graded, the Valiant stuff hasn't really been, and these very desirable keys do fetch a pretty penny. But people still say Valiant comics don't move, so I do understand what that is, and I'll tell you. Basically, I've mentioned everything here that's like over $10, $15. Unfortunately, all the stuff, even the small keys that are like $5 and even $10, trust me from personal experience, don't listen to the price guides, they don't move for that. Like Eternal Warrior #1, Turok #1, I have a hard time selling those for $1. So Valiant fans want these and kind of these only keys. If it's not these keys, yes, it's going to be pretty darn worthless, and that's where the reputation comes from. But if it's these keys, you got a payday. Check your collection, see what you got, keep on hunting.
Make sure to come on down to Sentiment Depot's Antiques and Collectibles, located at 238 West Delaware Ave in Pennington, New Jersey. Find so many great books for just $1 and the lowest prices on key comics around. Enjoy a huge selection of graded comics priced up to 20% lower than current fair market value. We are open from Wednesday to Sunday, closed Monday, Tuesday. You got a collection you want to sell? Bring that too. Can't wait to see you there.